Tonight's topic is race, the educational system, and the future of our youth. So just to start this off, I was asked to speak a little bit about the pipeline to prison and education, which a lot of us are really not aware of. So I decided to pull Connecticut statistics as well as national statistics, just so we could get a full picture of what's going on with the youth and the kids in our school districts. So being a girl of color, dealing with women of color, it is very hard to know that our young ladies are given exclusionary discipline. They are the winners of the prize of harsh punishments. They are being thrown against floors, desks, grabbed in ways, or maybe being on a cell phone. It's on YouTube, it's everywhere. And we're seeing it more now, but this is not new. It's just that we have more access and visibility because of social media and cell phones. 1 in 5 young girls, girls of color, are molested and raped. 1 in 5. And I just pulled a few statistics so that I could really let you know why it's so important. Our girls, 16% of the females in the school system in the country are girls of color, 16%. 1/3 of those girls, 1/3 of the girls arrested on school grounds in the country, so 33% of the girls arrested on school grounds are girls of color, but yet they only make up 16%. They're being suspended at 6 times a higher rate than their white counterparts in their classrooms. They're being suspended for braids. They're being suspended for afros sometimes. They're being suspended for prom dresses, suspended and expelled. And what does the pipeline look like? Because I said to myself, well, we always use these little fancy terms, pipelines. What are pipelines? A pipeline is a long pipe, typically underground, for carrying oil, gas, and et cetera over long distances. The word that stood out to me was it's underground. So we don't even see it happening. We don't even see that our young girls of color are feeding $1 billion prison industry. Because in the state of Connecticut, we invest between $12,000 and $36,000. So $12,000 for the school district of Danbury per student per year, $12,000 per child, to $36,000, I think it was Cornwall School District. And in the prison system for the state of Connecticut, 1 child, they get $231,000 for. So it's feeding a system. And we are unaware. I go back to the rape and molestation. If 1 in 5 girls are raped, they are traumatized. But no one is connecting the trauma piece. No one is connecting the anger because they have been violated. No one is connecting the fact that 2.7 million grandparents in this country are raising grandchildren, and about 40% of them are under the poverty line. No one is connecting the high prison rate of our children of color's parents, but they are expected to go to school, grow, and learn. So tonight, that's what the pipeline is. The pipeline is an underground system that our young girls are not, it's not talked about. We talk about the boys. We all know about what our boys of color are going through, but they're missing the piece that the girls are at a higher rate. So for the incarceration, I guess we at some point had a girls' facility in the state of Connecticut that I wasn't even aware of, but just some statistics to lead off the conversation. 82% of the incarcerated girls had behavioral issues. 54% had substance abuse issues. 82% had trauma disorders. 90% had psychiatric issues and concerns. So to head the conversation off, what is trauma? I've learned that trauma is like taking a nail, beating it with a hammer into a wall, pulling the nail out, and just painting over it. The hole's still there. You haven't filled the hole, and we're just painting over it. So that's my piece on the pipeline to prison, and I wanted to welcome everybody here, and I kind of want to make it a more open conversation. I do have questions, but I've never moderated before, so I kind of even had to Google what does a moderator actually do. Because that's what we've learned in law, you just Google everything. So I think to start off, the first question I would like to ask from everybody's point of view, what is the state of education today in the state of Connecticut? What is the state of our educational system?
Sorry, I'm not really comfortable with the mic, but just bear with me. So as a teacher, I would say that the state of education is driven by numbers. However, my concern as a teacher is that the numbers don't tell the whole story. And like you were saying, there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of things that happen inside the classroom and outside of the classroom that can impact those numbers, that can impact how a student does overall. So for me, as a teacher, even though we are pushed to perform and our students are pushed to perform, as soon as we get into the classroom, we have to look at the individual student and see where they are and where they are emotionally. Because it's hard to teach a child when they're coming to school and they have emotional issues, when they have trauma. But I do feel that although we're seeing the numbers, especially coming from a school that the numbers at one point were low, now our numbers are higher. Now we're finding that the issue is not dealing with the numbers, but dealing with the whole student. Trying to encourage them and inspire them to not just achieve academically, but to also feel emotionally secure, to feel loved, to feel welcomed in the classroom, and especially if they're not getting that at home. So I do feel like we're focused on some of the wonderful things in education, but we still need to make sure that we're serving the whole student. And as an educator, I've been teaching for 6 years now, so I'm in the early stages of my profession. There's a lot of pressure as a teacher to meet the numbers, to meet the deadlines. But I have to remember that I came into education to meet the student and to help support the student. So especially in Connecticut, I feel like we get a lot of support as teachers, but numbers, that seems to be the focus. And I think that's becoming a problem in our education system today, especially for students of color. If they're not meeting the numbers, we need to find out why. And a lot of times the reason why is not just based on academics.
In a past life, I was a school social worker, so I'm coming from the other end where all I wanted to focus on was the whole student, but I was supposed to be limited to my 18 IEP kids, but I was in school with 400 in Hartford. I see one of my students here. And I think even though Connecticut does a really good job of trying to work with children in their mental health, we have things like Women in Crisis. We have a lot of programs that try to address the students' mental health and how we discipline kids. I think there's still a long way to go, but I think comparatively speaking, we're better than other states. I'm also a researcher on that, and I like numbers, so I know we're doing better, but we still got a ways to go.
As a student, what is the state of education in our state, in your opinion?
Hello, I'm Angelia. I was going to introduce myself again. And I go to Bluefield High School. I basically went to school with people that I grew up with, so this topic of discussion is something that I wasn't always privy to. And so now, thinking about it, the state of education in my school, I think with better work in an environment that is more diverse. Because I go to a school that is primarily Black. So you don't really get to experience what someone else would experience if they're going to a primarily white school or if they're going to a more diverse school. So everybody has their own experiences, and I just would like to hear people's different stories because I only have my story. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Sherelle. So the state of education in our state, so I go to Blue High School as well, and I find that being a black student, you often feel like you have to compare yourself to quote unquote a white student. Like you never think, oh, as long as they're white, they must be smarter than me, or this, that, and the third. So I think that's a big problem, not just here in Connecticut, but probably in other places as well, because that's not necessarily true. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed.
Sorry, can I ask a question? Yeah.
So I wanted to know, especially from Madeline Eva, if you think that the No Child Left Behind Act was helpful.
I don't work in school anymore, so I
Yes and no. I would say that I think it's important to have set standards, and that as teachers we have a goal in mind, something that we should reach towards. And I think in Connecticut we're doing a great job with that, setting our standards high and keeping our standards high. And I think that it has pushed me as an educator, and I think it has pushed our students. And since I work in a predominantly a school with predominantly students of color, I think it has pushed their sense of self, their sense of self-worth, self-advocacy, working in an environment where we're setting the standards high, we're using the tests that we're giving as a marker of that growth. But again, I think that it creates a lot of stress. I teach AP literature, and I see with a lot of our AP students that they're under a lot of pressure because the test doesn't really show all of the talent that a student has, and I can see a student in one format who really excels, but then when they're taking a test, they're not doing as well. And the same thing with the SAT. The SAT is a big push because that's the gateway to the rest of their future. And so as I teach seniors, and I see the pressure to meet the test standards. And so sometimes when they don't meet those standards, that self-esteem drops. And it's hard to rebuild that when you're comparing test scores, when you're comparing how well they did on this exam or that exam. So I think we have to have some balance. I think we definitely have to encourage extracurricular activities, music, art, to really see where a student excels, because some students do better in different environments than others. So I do think that we're moving in the right direction. I think we have to look at not just how our country functions in terms of education, but look at other countries and see where they're hitting the marks. And we need to spend some more time really delving into how to really enrich the whole student. But I think we're making some strides, and I think that it has made me a better educator to things like Common Core and all of these standards, just to look at a marker and try to reach that marker. But I think we're completely there? No. And sometimes the frustration with education is that we do something for a while and then we get into that rhythm and then it changes. And so it's frustrating sometimes when it's always changing for a teacher and for a student. So I think there needs to be a little more time and energy put into looking at what's working well in other places.
Like I said, I don't work in school anymore, so I probably feel like I have more freedom than you did to answer. I think that we teach too much to the test, and I think I was working in a charter school, and so there was a lot of testing, and I worked with little kids. I was in elementary school, and these kids were stressed out for these standardized tests, and I felt like it was always standardized test time, and they only got gym once or twice a week. Winter rotations, the extracurriculars, and when I was little, and I feel real old now, we had gym every day, we had recess, we had art and music, and it wasn't a choice, and I just felt like you got to learn more that way, and I feel like right now, our kids are being forced to learn this very specified amount of information just to like answer these test questions, but then also with students of color, like we don't, again, the research shows that we don't do as well on standardized tests because of things like stereotypes, threat, but also just because we learn differently, and so I think it's not fair to students of color because it's not an instrument that we do well in, but we're measured on that, and that influences like our scholarship money, but if you get into college and so many things in the future, and so I'm personally very frustrated with No Child Left Behind because it created a whole new way to leave our kids behind, and tons of kids are left behind, so I feel super frustrated with this. I'm also very scared of what's to come, though, I will say that.
Thank you.
As I initially indicated, girls of color are suspended 6 times at a higher rate than their counterparts. What do you think are the reasons for the increase in suspensions, expulsions, and other school-based arrests in the schools across the country?
Well, personally, I think that administration and other people of power within schools are possibly becoming afraid of the students as a whole based on the media and other things that they're seeing. So now they're taking those stereotypes and then they're looking at the students and they're saying, okay, let me take her out of this particular building, let me take her out of this environment because I don't know what she's capable of doing, because what I see, I don't know if she can do that as well.
I would say, Angelia had brought up more of the need for diversity in the classroom in terms of seeing students of different races and backgrounds. I think the same is needed in terms of teacher education. I think there needs to be more diversity in terms of the teacher population. When I first started teaching, I was teaching in a district where I was one of the only teachers of color. I think there needs to be more education for multicultural awareness. I think fear is a big part of it, like Cheryl was saying. The media doesn't help, but education in general and having a desire, if you're not an educator of color, wanting to know more about the background of your students. And I think there needs to be more opportunities for teachers to have that. And of course, with the No Child Left Behind, with all the standardized tests, there's not as much room for that in education. So I just feel like in general we need to have more education on multicultural awareness. And we need to have students that see more teachers that look like them and also know their culture and can work within that understanding.
Something so I did a lot of research by numbers and stuff. And so something else that I also found is that black girls are more likely to be suspended more than every other race, which I thought was interesting. And in my research, I found, I guess a new phrase is adultification of black kids. And so people think that they are older and they understand things more than their age. And so I actually have no idea how old you two are. And I'm sure I probably get you're probably older than you actually are. And I think that's what happens with the teachers. And so they just assume you have the mindset of a 17-year-old and